All right, so I was thinking about how I wanted to talk about this, and then I was on the tweets before we recorded the show, and I concluded that I wanted to do this as a bit of a standalone. I hope I don't go too long on this because I don't feel very well, and I don't have the energy to go for so long doing all this podcasting today. But at the end of the game of the Cowboys and the 49ers, they were doing the on-the-field interview with Brock Purdy and George Kittle. 49ers be out there looking like Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame always is like growing up, they always had a squad where they could have some white boys out here, not just one, right? Like a handful of them, a variety of white boys out here doing the talk, right? Like that was what they could give you. So he's out there, and they got two of the white boys. And let me stop saying white boys because that sounds more patronizing than I realize. It's two of the white guys. You understand what I mean? And the white guy number 3 pulls up Nick Bosa, and Nick Bosa pulls up wearing his white hat. See, Nick Bosa ain't really no TV veteran, Sean, because I could barely make the hat out because it was white and the letters on it were gold, right? So, and like it's the bright light that was there. I couldn't really tell what it was, but apparently the hat said "Make America Great Again." I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know they had them in the white.
I was gonna say, if you're a real one, just do the classic red joint. Like, what are you doing this white and gold one? That's not synonymous with MAGA.
Oh, maybe it matched his shoes.
Maybe.
You know, and we know how Nick Bosa gets down, but he popped out and he did that, and then he rolled out. And somebody asked him about it at the press conference after the game about him stopping and on, you know, the highest rated primetime program in America. And I mean, you putting on for Trump. Like, I don't think there's any other way to say what he did. I'm not saying that's good or bad, at least not right now, but that is what he did. And so he got to the podium and he was asked a question about it, and this is what he had to say.
I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I think it's an important time.
What you mean you're not going to talk too much about it, partner? Like, you made that call. You did this. You brought us here. This ain't about something that you liked on the internet or anything else. You decided that you wanted to put that out there, and it's an important time. Now, to me, the question to ask right there is, why is this an important time? Because I don't know that dude. I don't know what he thinks is important. I have no idea what Nick Bosa thinks is important. Last thing I'm going to pretend like I know anything about is what Nick Bosa thinks. That's never come up for me. Like, oh, I wonder what that guy thinks. No, it's not how it goes. But if you say this is an important time, hey, man, here's your chance, right? So what do you think makes this an important time? That would be my question. That was not exactly the follow-up. This is what we got.
I mean, I realize you didn't say you want to talk too much about it, but have you been tempted in the past to kind of waive your
No, I mean, it's definitely a little easier nowadays, but no, I don't feel too inclined to do that.
Easier because
just a different climate.
What's different, big dog? And by the way, not wearing the hat at the podium, which implies to me, I'm assuming somebody that works for the 49ers is like, hey, homie, hey, you got another one? You got another hat? Like, look, if you don't want to comb your hair, that's fine. But if you got another hat, it would be really nifty if you decided to put that on. This is my thing about this. I don't want to say I have no problem with him wearing the hat that he wore on television. I am going to say that on a very basic foundation of principle, I can say he did not do anything wrong. And so this is what I mean. And I think that this is a very important point. And I've said this many times over the years that you've been listening to me. I am not the person who says that I want athletes to say more about politics in public because I really only want to hear from the people that I agree with. Why would I want to hear people promote causes that, in the most delicate sense, I don't agree with, but in the worst case, I find to be like legitimately destructive and problematic? Why would I want people to say those things, right? And so saying that you want to hear people talk about politics, very few people mean that like truly objectively. Like, I would like sports to be a marketplace of ideas. That's not really what people mean when they say that. It's normally an argument that is made from the left. And what you want to hear is people say things that are in line with the left. This is an issue also that takes on greater resonance with black people. Now, the reason that this is the case, and I understand it, is because in large part, it feels like these feel like the only times and places that some of these messages get heard. I'm going to have to like circle this back around to the things that happened with Colin Kaepernick in 2016 and like subsequently in 2017, which kind of goes through 2020 when it stops in a certain form, right? I understood in part the argument that people made when they said they come to sports for an escape from larger real life issues. What I didn't understand was who the people were who were saying at the time that they wanted to escape from the issue of police brutality, because it was an issue that they had demonstrated not at all that they were ever listening to anybody talk about. They just didn't want to hear about that while they were watching football or whatever it is. I get the idea that you just didn't want it. The argument of exhaustion, I simply could not buy. Like, I felt like that was disingenuous and dishonest. And if you were to say that you didn't want to hear it because you didn't agree, I would understand that too. What I understood in the moment or in the face of it was, if you have been trying to get somebody's attention about something and you don't feel like you can get anybody to hear you, you got to take it to where they are. You got to take it where they live. And so taking that message into those games was an effective way to, in some ways, get your point across. And I would make the argument that a lot of that work that was done in 2016 and a lot of that from football players doing what they did in 2016 led to the culmination of a lot of things, which was the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd in 2020, when NFL players, I still contend, actually got a lot from the NFL. Right? It may not be in ways that you can see and look at, but they actually got a lot. But the foundation of that and the beginning of that is with putting it in people's faces when they didn't want to hear it. So at once, I can understand how you don't like hearing from people that you don't agree with, while on the other hand, fully understanding that sometimes you just got to put up with it. That's what it's going to be. There was something that I noticed that went down when Colin made his statements and who got treated how and when. That was very important. Now, number one, I contend that Colin Kaepernick suffered the brunt of the league in a way that nobody else did, because everybody else, once they came out there and did it, it was after they had been given permission. Colin's the one person who didn't wait until somebody said it was okay, right? That's the guy that you have to stamp down. Everybody else was operating within the rules that had been presented to him. Colin was the first one to say what you gonna do about it, right? That is in part why Colin went down. The other reason why Colin went down, and this is very important, okay? Think about this. Colin Kaepernick became kind of a sort of pariah, you know, a hero in some circles, obviously, but a pariah in others in more mainstream circles because of not standing for the national anthem, right? That's kind of how it seems or it comes across to people. He didn't stand for the national anthem, and that's what happened. But you know who else didn't stand for the national anthem? Marshawn Lynch. And when Marshawn Lynch didn't stand for the national anthem, he didn't come to some compromise like Kaepernick did and take the knee to give to show deference and all of that stuff. No, sir. He did what Colin did in the first place and just sat there by the water cooler. But when people asked him about what he was doing, he didn't answer any questions about it. True courage of Colin Kaepernick is not that he did not stand for the national anthem, is that he clearly articulated his position on this country, on the police, on black people and brown people, and how all of those things came together. The punishment was for the articulation of what he had to say. The courage is in the willingness to do just that, and the refusal to be like, I ain't got to say nothing about that. Mind your own business. He did not do that. That is the biggest reason why those things played out the way that they did. Okay. He could have lied and said he was a Jehovah's Witness if he wanted to. He didn't. He decided to take that stand. Okay. And then you get Nick Bosa, who get on TV and show that hat and then get to a press conference and then he don't want to say nothing about it. A thing that happens in media, and this is a big thing in media. I think it then trickles down into life, but I think that this is just generally a media thing because I've been in enough production meetings to understand how it works. When you find a topic to discuss or something that's going to generate a level of engagement, it's almost like setting a betting line in Las Vegas. You need something that gets people on both sides. And so these issues wind up being positioned in such a way that it feels like you're sitting on a fulcrum and that you got this side and that side, and the ideas are of equal everything. right? Equal weight, equal morality, equal top to bottom, whole stuff. Like, that's the way it goes. And so what you wind up with, like when I asked this question on Twitter about what was going on with Bosa and the hat, and really for me, it was about how he handled it after the fact. But I still had a lot of people say to me, well, you would say that it's okay if it was a Harris-Walls hat. I don't think that you can equate those two things for a number of reasons, okay? But I get that argument on a very, very superficial level. But I feel like if you were to ask somebody why they were wearing a Harris and Walls hat, they'd answer the question as to why or what made the time important. Bosa says it's an important time, but he doesn't really want to talk about it. He then tells us that he feels more comfortable expressing this because it is a different climate. But if it is a different climate, then why can't you say something, right? Like, how much of this has actually changed? Like, these are actual questions that I think that you ask him if you do, in fact, respect the man's intelligence. Now, if you don't respect the man's intelligence, that's his own thing. But he decided to jump himself into a space of ideological, intellectual discussion, or at the very least, intelligent discussion. And I think on the media end, it becomes important to ask people questions when they ask for attention. He wanted the attention for what he did. Give it to him. I'm not telling that man to shut up and rush the passer. No, I'm telling him to do the opposite. I'm saying, speak up, Playboy. I can't really understand what it is that you're talking about, but I'd like to know a little bit more about your position. Could you tell me, please? Now, maybe he's not prepared to articulate that. Maybe that's possible. But you should want to give it a try. This is clear. Like I say, it is clearly very important to you. So what exactly is it that you're doing, or what exactly is it that you're signaling? The thing that makes the whole Trump situation interesting on a level and different on another is that it's so clearly branded, right? Like, it is branded in a way that is typically more in line with commerce than with politics. And so Make America Great Again is a brand, okay? And it is a brand that represents some things pretty clearly. Bosa decided he wanted to rep for that brand. And so the question is, why don't you want to speak on what that brand is? Well, it gets to something that I've also talked about on this show many times. Things that can get you fired at a regular job can get you elected in American politics. Now, I fully understand that Nick Bosa is not thinking about things with like this level of subtlety and, you know, the combination of all these factors, right? I know that he's not thinking about this, but that becomes the truth. And so for him, I would just raise the question, man, and just a thought. If you saw them clips of what was going on at Madison Square Garden, that was wild, man. Like, you could talk about that comedian and all his jokes or whatever. I'ma just tell you that they literally played Dixie before a black man came to the microphone, and he actually kept just roll with it. But anyway, that's the brand you putting on for. And if that's the brand you put on for, hey, man, that's your call. And you really good at football, and I bet you can fight, and all of that's cool. I'ma just ask you, would you be willing to articulate those positions in front of the people that you work with? And if you are, hey, that's what it is. Like, I remember when Trump got elected in 2016, Derek Wolfe, who played for the Broncos, was a big Trump guy. He was a pretty open Trump guy. I also remember that after the election, after the Super Bowl in January 2016, on Highly Questionable, we would always get all the guys on the Super Bowl team for interviews. And Dan would love to always ask people, who's the craziest guy in the locker room? And to a man, the answer was Derek Wolfe. Every single one of them said it was Derek Wolfe. So apparently Derek Wolfe could wear his MAGA hat if he wanted to, man. Ain't nobody want no problems with Derek Wolfe. And maybe probably want no problems with Nick Bosa. But apparently Nick Bosa don't want no problems with a question. And so even if you ride with his, desire or willingness to put on for that cause in that situation, just don't tell me that took no courage, because it didn't. It didn't take anything. It was throwing the rock and hiding your hand, right? There was an opportunity for you to answer those questions. You could have. Why not? And maybe the answer that somebody in his position will give is that they feel like they're going to wind up being canceled or whatever it is. Maybe that's what you think. I don't know. But if they was going to cancel you for talking, they'd have probably canceled you for the hat. Maybe once you start talking this stuff out, maybe putting words to it is the thing that makes people uncomfortable. That's what happened with Colin, for example. Maybe that'd be the same thing for him. I don't know. I just know this. we get to ask the questions. And he earned a lot more questions than he got. And I think it just fundamentally came down to nobody wanted it to be uncomfortable. I got news for you. Once you break out that hat, it's already uncomfortable for somebody, even if that somebody ain't you. The NBA is officially back, which means you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite teams only on Prize Picks. You can make a Prize Picks lineup between the NFL and the NBA in as little as 60 seconds. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. So make sure you go to prizepicks.com/Bomani and use code Bomani for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/Bomani. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.